Hey guys, how's it going? My name's MKid75. Welcome back to another video here on the channel. As you guys know, we are doing 2 days of streaming, 2 days of video, and 3 off days a week. Does that add up? Yes, that adds up to 7. So this is a video day since it is Friday. Today's video, I wanted to do a rebuttal video on some things that I said pre-Warmind and during Curse of Osiris. And I wanted to go over those videos with you guys to see what's changed, how my opinion has changed on Destiny 2, and how my overall perception of the game has evolved. So, without further ado, let's go to this video, the one video that during the time Destiny 2 frustrated the hell out of me, why I didn't feel like Destiny 2 was right for me at the time, thus the title, Why Destiny 2 Isn't For Me. So we could kind of start off here at the beginning, and we're just going to go over it, a little bit. We're not going to go over the full 42 minutes or the full 35 minutes of these videos. I'm just going to kind of nitpick here and there, kind of skim and let you guys know what's changed. This franchise much or really at all anymore, and that simply boils down to it's just not the game for me anymore. And what do I mean by this? Well, unfortunately, Destiny 2 has been disappointing, to say the least. We come in from Destiny 1. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video right now to tell you guys that I should never have compared Destiny 2 to Age of Triumph's Year 4 or Year 3 Destiny 1. And the reason being is because they had their two separate identities to each other. I think I go further into explanation about this, being that Destiny 1 was almost perfect, that, it was the type of game that it was, and it was perfect, almost perfect for what it was trying to be. After 3 years, Destiny 1 found its identity, and it held that, and it grasped onto that, and it was great. During this time period, Curse of Osiris, right before Warmind, Destiny 2 was in a state that wasn't the greatest. I think faction rallies was still a token grind fest. The raid layer at the time and the raid itself wasn't anything too special. Leviathan and Eater of Worlds. I knew those two weren't really anything special. The raid layer in Curse of Osiris was the best place to be. I think I go in depth with this video about some of the mechanics in the game and some of the places in the game that shouldn't have come across the way that they did. But I think making those assumptions as someone that's not into game development, that views the game and cares for the game, I don't think I had the right approach to it. So, continuing on, at least from my opinion. But Destiny 2 has also not sold me, or hasn't necessarily made me want to play it. And that boils down to a couple factors. Back in Destiny 1, since Destiny 1 is the closest comparable game to Destiny 2, we will compare the two. Okay, so that's why I did it. It's because the two games are comparable to each other in the aspect of the fact that they are trying to accomplish the same thing, and Destiny 2 being the direct sequel, I decided, let me go back and compare it to D1. Even if it isn't a fair comparison per se. Back in Destiny 1, I had all sorts of reasons to play it. Even if I completed everything, I still wanted to play it. And that's because the game brought me back week after week, whether that's to complete the Nightfall or to get a raid done or something like that. And the reason for that was because there was challenges every week, and not to say the milestones are challenges, but challenges that would give the player an opportunity to earn something, to make a name for themselves. And these were kept in something called a record book. The record books were a great idea because it gave players the incentive to want to get back into the game and to want to play it week after week. I think my biggest issue at this time was replayability and the fact that I didn't know if I wanted to go back in to Destiny 2 week after week with that current gameplay loop. The milestones in Destiny 2 were the exact same thing as the weekly reset in Destiny 1. It was just more in your face about it. Shit. They were challenging for people who were underleveled, or didn't really have a good approach to the game. But for, veteran players like myself, it was kind of a struggle to really want to sink your teeth into it. And at the time, there wasn't when I mean accomplishment, I think what I meant by accomplishment in this video was that there wasn't something I could sink my teeth into. So during Destiny 1, you had strike-specific loot. At the time, this game didn't. So I could go into any Vex Strike and get the Imago loop. I could go into the Crucible to get Aya's Luna. Cabal Strike, Tread Upon Stars. I could go into the Malik Strike to get the hood, the Cask of Malik. Stuff like that players went after and sought after because it was unique loot. And in this game, at the time, it had unique loot. It had the Curse of Osiris had the craftable weapon wheel or whatnot, but that itself was it was a step in the right direction per se, but it wasn't the right thing that the game needed. It was, hey, you need these materials, go grind out strikes. It was a constant, hey, go grind this to get X material to come back to complete your thing to get the weapon. And the weapon wasn't random at all. It was static, so everybody had the same roll. Everybody had, the same gun essentially, and there was no unique variant to it other than the camo that you put on your gun. And I think at the time that really did bother me. Because, coming from someone that plays Diablo, someone that plays Borderlands 2, so even somebody that was heavily into Destiny 1, having set gun rolls on a weapon and just didn't make a lot of sense to me, especially for a loot and shooter. You go after the power fantasy, you go after what's fun, and having no variance in the weapons at the time wasn't really fun for me. Granted, the record books didn't really come in until The Taken King. Okay, so record books. We're gonna go kind of into the present perspective of this. They have something called... They have record books in the game, but they're called tabs now. Or not tabs. Let me load up my character here. And I'll show you what I mean. They have like a separate tab that you can go under and view, your accomplishments, your collections. They basically acquired the Grimoire back in from D1. But they call it triumphs in this game, in Forsaken now. And I think that's what I was really going for at the time. And the reason being is because I wanted to look back and say, hey, I did this thing, I completed a raid, I completed this raid, and, having it track my score was really cool too. And in Forsaken, I think they really did a good job at expanding upon that with the collections page, giving it a whole new thing. So I could go back and I could grab any piece of gear that I've earned in the game, except for Quick Fame for whatever reason, and I can say, hey, I need Young Ahamkara's Spine. Let me go ahead and take that. Or I could go to a legendary armor piece. And I could go, hey, I want to go to this open world page because I think the Genesim Knight stuff is pretty cool. Let me go ahead and, grab that. I think that was, that is probably one of the best additions to the game that Bungie could have added because it gives you back what you fought for. So you earn your keep essentially, but you have to get it to earn it back. Which I thought was is a really good idea. Shaders, no Ava Levante, but you can now mass delete shaders, and you can pull them straight from your vault. So, say you come over your flares and come over to shaders, you could pull shaders and get the shaders for your character and Sparrow customization. So that is something huge that they added back. Going back to Triumphs, they added lore pages, which was something that I think during the time I was frustrated about because I had a lot of unknown enemy bosses that during Destiny 1 they said, hey, we've got this enemy here. Its name is Skolas or Kexis. And they gave you a lore card on it, and it was oh, cool, now I get to find out the origin of this boss, And I thought, reading up on the stuff, going into a more expanded Destiny universe was one of the coolest things that D1 did. Skip around. A sniper rifle in your secondary or your power energy weapon slot. It doesn't adhere to it. Rocket launchers, swords, LMGs all adhere to the power fantasy, right? Because they're supposed to be these guns that you wield in your territories, in your Triatary. So that's another thing that I was going on about in this video was the fact that they had that dueling weapon system, 2 primaries per slot, and then you have your powerful weapon, the heavy hitter, the weapon that you look forward to melt bosses with and whatnot. And at the time, you had a couple good weapons. Dubious Valley was one. Darcy was one. Borealis was another, but that was PlayStation exclusive up until Forsaken. The Colony, fucking Broken Gun. Alone as a God, the Raid Sniper from Leviathan. A lot of those guns were, big, but I think I was more bothered by it because coming from D1, again, I think a lot of my frustrations were coming from Destiny 1, given this new system and the fact that I saw it not working in the longevity. Because in my opinion, 2 primaries and a hard hitter made no sense to me. The way I always thought of games like this is primary, secondary, Triatary, your hard hitter. And I think that's what I was so disgusted in with the base game up until Forsaken system. But they did fix that, which I was happy to see. So the current system now, of course, is you can have whatever gun you want except for the heavy hitters in your first and second slots. So you can have hand cannons and pulse rifles and bows, shotguns, snipers in both these slots. So you could play it like D1, you could play it like D2, or you could play it like, I'm going to say D3. Or play it like Forsaken. And I thought that was some of the coolest shit that they added to the game. The fact that you could play however you wanted to according to your play style. That was the biggest change that came, when I make this video. I made this video in March of this year, and Forsaken launched September 4th. So that's let's see if I can't count. April, May, June, July, August. That's almost 6 months apart. It's just under 5 months apart from Curse of Inconsistencies to where we're at now, or where Forsaken launched. And, I'm glad that they made that change in Forsaken. I thought it was, one of the biggest changes that they could have made. And I applaud Bungie for that. If this would happen, during this time, I wouldn't have been so pissed off at this. So that's kind of what I was, raging and going on about.
Territory. Trietary slot. There's supposed to be those weapons of mass destruction than what you began with. In Destiny 2, it kind of resembles the same thing as Pong. Where, yeah, cool, I get a weapon. I get to shoot alien. I may not have superpower, but I don't die. I don't feel like I'm going to die. I don't feel like I'm in a fight or flight situation. I feel like, okay, I'll eventually get this back. I'll get it back because there's no point in the story to where it says, oh, if you do this, you fail to get said power back.
Okay, so I know what I was talking about there now. During the base game of Destiny 1 and even into Curse of Osiris, there was times with that kind of bro consistency with lore. And one of the biggest lore inconsistencies that I guess Destiny's had was bringing your Guardian able to spawn back due to, wiping in darkness. The darkness is basically a no-res zone, so since there's no light, you can't be brought back. That's the whole thing with the darkness. Now, I don't know why I was speaking about this. I think it was more or less kind of my frustrations with the base game being the way it played out to be. We lost our powers, we had guns to shoot things, but it was anticlimactic throughout the base game story, and I think that was my main, holy shit, my face. That was my main objection to at this point of what I was talking about.
Right. That's tangenting from the examples of balance.
Oh.
Okay. So, balance. What I mean by balance in Crucible. Let's go to the stupidest mode in this game, Crucible. Any Crucible mode. Crucible, they did the weapon systems for Crucible for competitive nature. Destiny, in the words of Luke Smith, in the words of anybody at Bungie, is not supposed to be a competitive game.
Okay. All right. I can see myself getting in trouble at this point. Because at the time, I wanted to so badly be this badass, powerful guardian, the god slayer that I knew we were. I wanted these fucking Gallarhorns, these icebreakers, these fucking superpowers that would just annihilate things. That would cause an imbalance within the system, because I heavily still do believe in power fantasy, but at the time I didn't want balance. I wanted some OP fucking broken gun to have fun with. And that was the thing that bothered me, I guess, during this time was that there was no game-breaking gun. There was no true way to exploit something, kind of like running through a Nightfall with Icebreaker and never needing ammo, or just cheesing a boss with Gallarhorn within 2 seconds. And I guess that was my main issue with balance. I brought up Crucible because at the time Crucible was a 4v4 game mode. And coming from a lot of competitive games, I'm used to like 5v5, 6v6s, 32v32s, because Battlefield. But I didn't like the competitive, so to speak, aspect of a 4v4 situation. I also didn't agree a lot, and still don't agree a lot with the way competitive is ran right now. They did fix a little bit of it, but they still haven't fixed my main issues with it. And my main issues with competitive is that it doesn't feel moment to moment. It's not so much balance issue anymore. It's more the 4v4 feels more like you against an entire team. Whereas Destiny 1's competitive Trials of Osiris was 3v3, so you had a more of a chance to create an impact. And there was, unlimited reviving, but once your team goes down, they go down, and that's the end of the round. So there was big impact plays that I have yet to really see or come across with the way that competitive is right now.
It just wasn't marketed for that, and it wasn't designed for that purpose. The Crucible is there for people who like to verse other people. Trials of Osiris was only implemented because it was canon to a lore story.
Okay. Alright, so no, that's wrong. That is completely wrong. Trials of Osiris was implemented as a competitive game mode because the player base wanted to kind of compete on a higher scale rather than coming in and going to like something like Rumble or Clash or Control. They wanted a more tense game mode, and Bungie came out with the 3v3 Trials of Osiris, which kind of made its way into lore. With the shit that Brother Vance was at the former lighthouse on Mercury before it got annihilated in D2. Not too much lore was given at the lighthouse. It was more of a chance to chase the top Crucible leaders to become top dog on either PlayStation or Xbox. So that's kind of the whole gist of Curse of Osiris coming into the House of Wolves and onwards. It really didn't become lore canon or really lore driven until Curse of Osiris.
Iron Banner was there because it was canon to a lore story.
Yes. That's right. But Iron Banner was also a game mode in Destiny's beta and alpha. Like, Iron Banner is the longest standing game mode in Destiny.
Get where I'm going with this? It all derives from the player versus enemy game that this game was marketed upon.
Okay. Yeah. Destiny 2 at the time had a huge problem with identity crisis. It didn't know if it wanted to be PvP. It didn't know if it wanted to be PvE. Most of the marketing went toward the player versus enemy side, with very few going PvP. The only time we ever saw existential PvP gameplay was within a trailer for a map. But mainly it's Guardian versus mega fucking Uber boss. Or Guardian killing ads, Guardian, showing Guardian dancing, showing Guardian doing stuff that wasn't player versus player driven. That's what a majority of the marketing for Destiny is. And at the time, I felt like Bungie didn't know which direction to go with the game.
Right? So why do we need to have a game where I have to sacrifice my power fantasy in the name of balance to a busted game mode, a not fun game mode?
Okay, so this is just all opinionated here, and I still hate the Crucible. And it might be because I'm bad at it, but I also don't like, getting killed in a competitive surrounding. I want to be the killer. So I guess that's where that frustration kind of leaked out from. Skipping onwards. Let's bring up this section. Oh god, that face.
Dawnblade, Voidwalker, what the fuck's the other one? Stormcaller, Golden Gun, Night Stalker.
Okay, so all the classes,
Arcstrider,
right?
Defender, Sentinel, Hammer of Soul. I'm just gonna name them off as I think, and
Striker,
Lightning Slam, motherfucking Titan. Right? We could look at these builds. See.
Lightning Slam, motherfucker. Good lord.
We could look at these builds, and we get two trees, two basic and to the point trees, to where I can't pick whether I want where I can't pick a combination between where if I want Wing Sun, and I want Ignite Touched, or I can't pick combinations. It's one or the damn other. One or the other. It's cool over here that I could pick whatever glide I want, whatever grenade I want, if I want a healing rift or an empowering rift. Cool. But at this point, who the hell cares about this half of the tree when building, making your character as powerful as they can be, adhering to certain situations in the game, adjusting to them as you go via a skill tree is gone, making it a two-way system with this game. You can't customize the abilities of your character behind two locked trees. These two locked trees make the game basic, and it sucks. I want to be able to build, say, an explosive sword build that I could use.
Okay. Without getting like hardcore into me bitching about stuff in the game, I'm bringing up Destiny 1 right now, and I'm bringing up my Warlock, same character you see here, and I'll bring up its solar class. It really doesn't matter what class I bring up, and that's because it had an RPG system to where I could customize my abilities, my armor, my recovery, my agility based on these skill bubbles. And it's something that was massively undercut in Destiny 2 with those trees. And that was hugely problematic for me because I still want a system, and back then I really wanted that system to where I can pick and choose via something very similar to this how my abilities went off. So, going along with that explosive sword build, well, I can create an explosive Sunsinger build, using Touch of Flame, Sunburst, No, no, not Sunburst. Viking Funeral. And I think I could put on like Sunbreakers, and I could have fusion grenades on. And they will explode. And enemies will explode upon contact, I could put on these gauntlets, and, they throw like micro or throw these only work with solar grenades, but if I had a two grenade setup on this character, I could just throw, those fusion grenades, and boom, 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 they would explode. I could create a warlock that, can knock back enemies, but I could also keep, something like Gift of the Sun on, or Angel of Light, Touch of Flame, and I could still have that knockback feature, right? But I could also still have self-res on there. Or I could switch it up and I could have Radiant Skin, which decreases all the damage. So I could create a completely offensive class right here and just kind of screw around with it. That class I was talking about was Brimstone, making explosions. So I can make a super offensive defensive class by doing this. Right? And it's extremely offensive, but it adds a lot of defense to you because of, Flame Shield. But it doesn't sacrifice anything that I have in these upgrade bubbles. Over in D2, it's, one way or the other. And I think that sacrifice really did bother me as a player coming in from, being a veteran of D1. And it is still that way, but it doesn't affect me as much now as I've become accustomed to the system as it did back then when I was really striving for more of an RPG system. Now that I think Bungie has found Destiny its feet, it's the way it's going to stay unless, some future DLC expansion says, we're going to bring back this cool new RPG system with upgrade tiers and shit like that.
Use fucking Phoenix Dive and secondary doesn't make sense. Balance.
Okay, so I'm just kind of like
that's not supposed.
I'm just going over what I said previously here.
Is it scout rifle? Is it auto rifle? Is it fucking trace rifle? Or will the meta be shifting over to power fantasy?
Okay, so meta, balance, I kind of contradict myself.
System, don't do it. Repeat Crucible map and strike protection. I mean, you're only limited to so many maps. You're bound to play the same map again.
Okay, so yeah, that was another problem back during the time that they completely fixed. This is irrelevant now. They basically had a lot of the same maps just coming up over and over again. A lot of the same strikes just coming up over and over again. And I think the game at the time had like 14 strikes and I think 10 to 11 Crucible maps, if I remember correctly. And a lot of the same maps just kept coming up over and over again. Like the game didn't register that there were other maps. They completely fixed that in hot patches.
It's just what's going to happen. Unless you got 50 maps and 50 strike maps in rotation. Warframe does it. A lot of games do it. I guess it's an okay thing if you're an aesthetics kind of person. Exotic Masterworks. Okay, so
I was talking about shaders and aesthetics there. That's been fixed within D2 to what I showed you guys earlier in the video.
You're going to do something that you've never done in this game. You're going to give exotics, say like Vigilance Wing, a buff to range, stability, handling, speed, and impact. On top of that, give it the ability to create an orb of light. Again, unless they really truly change Masterworks to be detrimental to the weapon and the overall balance to a weapon, it does fuck all.
No, that's wrong. That was completely wrong, and that was a lot of. That's my bad for being wrong. Masterworks during the time were a step in the right direction for investing into a weapon, making it more powerful, and that's for legendary. But the exotic Masterworks for weapons like Graviton Lance or Vigilance Wing or weapons like that made them unholy powerful. During that time, Pulse Rifle meta came out, and it was Graviton Lances and Vigilance Wings everywhere. The exotic catalyst for Vigilance Wing literally made it into an auto rifle that fired 5 shots at a time. So you got like that. And at the time, it made Graviton Lance, its masterwork, really stupidly strong, and it was the 2-tap. You went and it's, alchemy, the like little orbs just had this stupid AoE that killed your teammates. And the yellow buffs that it gave to your weapons at the time, increasing range, increasing impact, increasing stability, handling reload speed, it did affect the weapon by a certain percentage. So it doesn't do fuck all unless you're Borealis.
It really does. Seasonal vendor...
Okay, Borealis was just an increase in reload speed. If you're a hunter, you don't reload. If you're a warlock with Lunafaction boots, you don't reload. The only class that... If you're a Titan with a Rally Barricade, you don't reload. And that's all Borealis's Masterwork does for its increased reload speed. I guess it kind of helps with changing elements out, but it's not a good Masterwork for Borealis.
Progression. Okay, so this is going to reset. Okay, that's what seasons do. Faction rally improvements. Faction rallies. Let's talk about faction rallies for a second.
Let's.
Faction rallies should be a thing that happens monthly. Say you start at the beginning of the month, you ally with a faction, and then everything anybody does with all those factions all go into the Grandmaster pool for a one-time limited only faction weapon that they all fight for.
Yes, this did happen. But it was one-time limited faction weapon per faction. So depending on the faction that won, got the weapon, but the factions also in Forsaken sold exotic catalysts, so an exotic weapon or character ornaments for Warlock helmet. I have another world. Hunter, I believe it was gauntlets, and then Titan boots. And then they sold Sunshot catalyst, Graviton Lance catalyst, and Vigilance Wing catalysts. So depending on which faction won, means that faction got both its faction gun and its faction catalyst and armor ornament. Back during this time, you just farmed a chest and you got its level 50 weapon, or you grinded your way up there. And the way you did it was basically you either grind chests out on Nessus or Titan or Earth or whatever the fuck you went for your favorite your favorite spot, or you went to Nessus and you farmed out lost sectors constantly. You did a lost sector, you did a public event. You got four bars up top. You went to do a lost sector and you came out with 8 tokens. And that at the time was the best way to get, 1,000 tokens in an hour. That at the time was the grind for faction rallies, and it was fucking retarded. There's not been any faction rallies yet in Forsaken. We'll see how it goes.
Right. So the winner, say at the end of the month, let's say Dead Orbit has 700,000 points. New Monarchy have 6,000, but it does something insane.
Okay, so I was at the time going for a weapon that did something stupidly insane, a legendary weapon that did something stupidly insane that no other weapon in the game did. They didn't do that for factions, but they did that for Crucible. If you went into competitive Crucible, and if you reset your glory rank, I think 3 times in Warmind, you got something called Redrick's Claymore. Or is it Redrick's Retort? One of the two. But it was a legendary pulse rifle that had its own ornament to it that fucking did some beast insane shit. But you could only get it by grinding out and resetting your competitive rank. And as stupid as that sounds in a busted game mode, a lot of people went after it, and I think only 6% of the player population got it because how insanely competitive it was to get that gun. They did the same thing with Crucible again in D2 with, I think, Redrick's Claymore, which is a scout. But that's kind of what I was going on to that they did in Warmind. Skipping ahead.
Can do and have done in the past? Even with Destiny, how they turned that game around?
Okay, so this is me talking about Taken King and Forsaken, and how Destiny shouldn't have to turn their game around for it to be good, or for it to be really, truly where it needs to be. They should be good from the get-go, but weren't good from the get-go. I think that's what I was on about.
I could still play this like I played Destiny 1, but I cannot. I just can't touch this game the same way that I felt the willpower to touch its predecessor.
Okay. So I think I just went into like a massive recap of the video within like the last 3 minutes. So the next video I believe was a more of an updated type thing. No, this is DLC expectations and wants. So this isn't talking about the game Warmind. Mars. But in between Mars... Oh, okay, so this was lore. This was me going on about lores and tangents and inconsistencies and how I hated it. I still hate it. But there are far less inconsistencies, and I think the team at Bungie did do a nice job of making sure that there's no plot holes within the Destiny universe with Forsaken. I think they figured that out within Warmind, and really in learning from Curse of Osiris that they needed to stay consistent with their previous game, and there couldn't be many rewrites to it, or any rewrites to it. So they kept canon. Mind. It's lazy writing. Warmind needs to have new story missions that give the player a sense of mystery, a dark mystery, a sense of lore, and a sense of, oh my god, this is cool, I want to do it again. Yes, it did that. It did that for the first 3 weeks. So we had the other son of Crotos, like what the fuck, there's another son of Crota, and then we had the worm god Zol. As much of a disappointment as Zol was, it was kind of mysterious, it was dark, it was like, holy shit, this thing's actually attacking the Warmind, and we gotta defend Warmind, why do we gotta do this, what's going on here? It kind of brought that back into Destiny, but it lightly brought that back. And And then within Warmind, there was hidden quests. So the coolest shit came up nearing the end of Warmind, and that was for the gun Whisper of the Worms, also known as Black Hammer, also known as Black Spindle 2.0, but it's more like Black Hammer. And that was kind of like the first onset of a Destiny dungeon, to where it was a hidden mission that sent you into a public event space that sent you spiraling all over the fucking place to go in search of killing bosses that came back from D1. So, Urzok the Hated from Skywatch, Valis Taric from the Imperial Landship command post out in Mars. Those were all, like, huge coming back. And there's another one, another taking guy, and, you know, you kill one of them to open up the portal, and then at the end of the encounter, you have to kill all three of them to get Nokris, basically, Nokris in gun form. And that's what the lore behind Whisper of the Worm is that Nokris never truly died. He became the gun itself. And I thought that was like, holy shit, that's cool. That's really cool. And in Forsaken, there's a lot of shit like that. They just opened up their first dungeon that's rotating every 3 weeks. They have Ascendant challenges, which you can only access if you have Queen's Foil, which is a way to view something like Ascendant Chest or find the Ascendant Realm. You know, the fact that Marisov came back from her Ascendant Realm, came back from the dead, you know. The Ahamkara coming into Forsake, you know. It's just like all this culmination of shit came into Destiny 2 all at once, and it's great that it does. And I'm glad that a lot of my worries and expectations got thrown aside, you know, all my, you know, wishes and wants for the game actually came true, or are coming true. You know, it's no longer this fuck all game that it's hard to come back week after week. It's more or less, hey, I want to come back, you know, to come grind out some loot, to get some of that sweet loot, you know. And that's the game it needs to be. Now, of course, I'm not playing it every night due to me wanting to take, you know, breaks from it, so I don't burn myself out. There's so much to do in this game right now that I can run on a burnout if I really, really tried hard enough. But I don't want to do that. So, I think some of the other minor underlying issues that I had with D1 or D2 was that there was no Flip Sparrows or Icebreaker. In Forsaken, they brought back Flip Sparrows, but they're exotic, and I can't get one because RNG fucks me over. But it's a reason why I grind out Eververse shit. And unfortunately, that's the only way to get it is through Eververse, but you can play the game to get shit through the microtransaction store, which is pretty cool. So there's like no pay to win aspect. It's grind to win. But that's the only way I can get my Flip Sparrow. And within recent leaks, spoiler, if you don't want to hear anything coming up with Black Armory, mute yourself, mute me. The return of some very powerful Destiny exotics from the Golden Age, Icebreaker, Thorn, The Last Word, and Thunderlord, are due back. And it's been rumored and leaked that these guns have certainties to come back. Now, it's not 100%. Shit can change between now and winter. But hope to dear Lord that my gun returns back to my hands. Oh my, I've missed Icebreaker. I'm excited. So, you know, coming back on, you know, rebuttaling my worries for the game, a lot of that shit's gone now. I could come back into Destiny and I can come back and say, hey, I want to come back week after week and I want to play the game. You know, I want to grind out for specific stuff for X amount of time. And I want to keep coming back and, you know, trying again, you know. And I'm glad that they did add back in strike loot. They added back in bounties, although they're not like bounty board bounties, like go out in the solar system and kill shit. No, that's more Foreververse. No, it's more like you go into strikes, you go into Crucible. Hey, do this, do this, do this. And even clan bounties, they fixed the clan system to where you don't have to go kill shit. You've actually got to complete these bounties with a clanmate, or you have to do a challenge within the raid to get high XP for your clan, which I thought was a fantastic addition by Bungie to insert into the game. The way that you get powerful gear is to do the weekly milestones, which is really good, which means you now get prime engrams, which increase your level ever so slightly so that you're not maxing out too fast. And the top way to get the most powerful in the game is completing the raid. The raid drops the most powerful loot in the game, which is the way this game should be. Not to really throw off the casual players or people who can't dedicate, time into the game to do the raid. I think it's something that the game truly needed to settle the score with us veterans or us hardcore players that wanted to grasp their teeth into something, and I think that's what Bungie did with the raid. And I have yet to play that raid, The Last Wish, but I've seen a lot of gameplay on it, and it took 18 and a half hours, almost 19 for World's First. And something cool that they did with the raid is that after you beat the raid, the whole world changed. Like, the whole in-game universe of Destiny is now evolving because the raid got beat. It unlocked a lot of new possibilities within the game world, so the game world's expanding, which it's never done before. In the sense of within a DLC, we now have dungeons appearing, new bosses coming out of the works, strikes appearing out of nowhere, and I think this is a very, very good thing. Now going back to one of my expectations for Warmind being 20 missions long, it's a $20 DLC. It's gonna be 6 missions. Even the base game for Forsaken was 6 missions long. I know it's a huge DLC. Do I wish it was longer for both Warmind and Forsaken? Yeah, but more so for Warmind than Forsaken. I could deal with what Forsaken is right now because Forsaken just keeps expanding and just keeps growing, which is what it needs to do. Warmind, could have done with 4 more missions just to expand upon the Braze and whatnot. But we got what we got, and we're here now. And so I'm glad that we're here now. I'm glad that Bungie is doing more and more to make the game better and more playable, adding stuff that they think the players would like, but also listening to the community, and taking that feedback and saying, okay, let's implement it this way. That's awesome. They've been really clairvoyant since Curse of Inconsistency, or Curse of Osiris, sorry, I'm just going to call it Curse of Inconsistencies due to lore reasons. And I think it's great. I think it's really great that Bungie is taking steps to make sure that it's appealing to its audience, but sticking true to its guns. So that's my rebuttal, or my now how do I think of Destiny 2. It's a game that I think a lot of people should try once to get into. Should at least play now that Forsaken's around. It's a lot of fun to play. If you are curious about checking out, maybe demo the game, maybe, I don't know, renting it, or, buying it physically. Or if you want to dive straight in and take the risk, buy the full set. So that's Forsaken plus the annual pass. So that way you have everything, you're not locked out of anything, and you can get the full Destiny 2 experience. That's the best way to do it. I'd highly recommend either of those options, but the ball's in your court whether or not you want to try Destiny 2. Highly recommend it now. And if you do decide to try it, I'll see you Starside Guardian. That's it for me tonight, guys. Hopefully you have a good Friday. We'll be streaming tomorrow. I'll see you then. Adios.